Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. We have a tremendous jam-in show tonight. We're talking about newly declassified documents that show exactly how embedded the deep state actually is, hiding documents on a 2020 election report from the president months leading up into the 2020 election. Now declassified, brought to us courtesy of Just the News and John Solomon. We'll take a look at the materials and what is inside, and then hear about all of the election lawfare that occurred while they were trying to engineer attacks against the president and to cover up for Joe Biden's actual criminality back in that fateful election. Then we've got updates out of New Jersey. We remember that MIKIE Sherrill was doing her best to not work with Homeland Security, came out with a limited hangout and explained that there were, in fact, non-citizens on their voter rolls, but that she wasn't going to cooperate. Apparently, that is coming to an end. Mark Wayne Mullen coming out with a new announcement today. We'll hit that one. And we'll see what else is going on with these elections, because we've got primaries. The DOJ is unleashing election monitors, and more updates on that. Then, big news in the Fauci saga. One of his top senior advisors pleaded guilty today. We've got the guilty plea. We'll take a look at the document and what he's actually pleading guilty to and why he's deciding to do this. Maybe he's flipped on somebody and maybe he'll start spilling the beans. Then lastly, we've got an update on Abrego Garcia, the alleged wife-beating illegal alien who was trafficking humans by our estimation, is also having his case appealed. We know that a judge in Tennessee dismissed it, and now the DOJ is firing back. We got the latest on that as well. So it's going to be a beautiful stream. Lots of updates, lots on the cases that we've been following here for a while, and we're excited to have you here. Thank you for subscribing to Watching the Watchers, liking the video, and all of the things. And now, since the tubes are nice and warm, let's get right into it, because we got business to attend to today. Starting with this one. Another deep state cover-up now revealed according to newly declassified documents. We've got the NSA that was reportedly really excited about releasing a new report, but the top level officials said no. And this was all in the months leading up to the 2020 election. One of the most safe and secure elections ever, where the president didn't even have the key knowledge and data that he needed to make decisions moving forward as we were all in the middle of COVID. And so the report comes courtesy of Just the News. You can see they give us some background here. Then we'll hit the actual document. We've got the full set of emails that were a memo that people were writing amongst themselves in the NSA. And it explains exactly what's going on. But we got to put some names to some of the redacted faces. And John Solomon's going to help us out with that. Now, this report was blocked. It was a report on foreign targeting of U.S. elections, not because the intelligence was flawed. No. It was because they knew that if they released it, they may get called the deep state. Trump might call them a name, or other people on the other side might call them names. And so we'll take a look at exactly what happened. But here are some of the people who were involved in this. And the report was recently declassified. It was written by an NSA analyst, and they were explaining what happened with a meeting about whether and how to release a previously long delayed report. So kicking this idea around, should we disclose this? You know, we're at the NSA, we've got some intelligence, maybe we should, but they decided not to. They knew that Trump was already coming through the intelligence agencies and cleaning house. And now, if they were going to enable the questioning of elections, it may be damning for them. So it was just released courtesy of the new White House Transparency Task Force. And here the memo was part of evidence that was reviewed by Barry Zulauf, is the name of the guy, the intelligence community ombudsman. He wrote, in fact, in 21, a scathing report, this came out before then, about spy agencies that were engaged in the politicization of intelligence, which we've known. They created the Russia collusion hoax, incorporating Hillary Clinton campaign propaganda into their ICA, intelligence community assessment, that they fed to Obama. And then on the other side, when they came across evidence that Joe Biden was in fact a criminal, they covered that up as well. So they were manufacturing evidence against the president, and then on the other side, burying evidence against their favored candidate. Now, the memo was dated back March 13th, 2020. A lot of other things were going on there, just declassified very soon, recently, and it was written by one of the analysts who had produced the report. The author repeatedly refers to "we, the analysts," and explains how frustrated he is that higher ups had delayed the release of this report. And the report in question had been proposed to be released all the way back in December 2018. And it all involved the targeting of the United States that began back in 2014 by foreign adversaries. Included also actions related to 2016 as well. So year after year, delayed. Now, an earlier, more limited version of the reporting had already been published, but the fuller version was held up for two main reasons. One, it would identify people in Congress, which I think would be important to know if they're also targeting Congress people. And other, didn't want to be judged to be sensational. They didn't want to say, oh, this is coming from the NSA. They must be crazy. They're making stuff up. This is all unrealistic, and so on and so forth. Now, we'll get into the documents, but then by February 2020, the distribution list had finally been reviewed. The report was pushed for release by the pending NSA director, a guy called General Paul Nakasone, and then Deputy Director George Barnes objected to the release as it is at this time. Okay, so those are the people who ultimately limited it. They came around, they tried some other possibilities. Well, what if we just water it down? What if we don't identify the Congress people and more? And one analyst below them argued that there was lasting foreign intelligence value. Like, this is a big deal. We need to know these names. We need to know who is the subject of all of these foreign attacks. Same meeting was also addressing Russian interference and their strategy for a 2020 Democratic primary, and faced a bunch of additional problems and more. And so ultimately, the documents have now come out. And previously, this is not new. This is a pattern. They also hid evidence of 2020 election meddling from the Chinese, per another report. One China analyst didn't want to send it to Trump. Remember, we read this one because he didn't want to give it to, quote, that vulgarian in the Oval Office, talking about Trump. Our own intelligence communities undermining the sitting president, not sending him the intelligence that he needs, which is their entire job. So this produced a majority assessment that said the Chinese didn't do anything. And the minority view, which was backed by John Ratcliffe at the time, now the current CIA guy, said that they did try to undermine Trump. And so the newly declassified memo parallels a lot of those other prior findings. And we don't get a lot of details inside the documents, but you can just see kind of the frustration that's happening here. So here's what we got inside. NSA member to another NSA member, both redacted. This is Friday, March 13, 2020. He says, let's start with this first section here. Today, I attended a meeting regarding what to do about the thing that we proposed releasing all the way back in December 18, which was intended to invite recipients to request blank underlying the report. Facts, evidence, supplements underlying the report. 2018. The blank in question was a blank. The someone and someone's efforts targeting the U.S. that started all the way back in 2014, including these other things about the 2016 election. Now, we had already published a blank report covering most things, but we were unable to include all details in the blank for two reasons. One, Congress. There's going to be people who will be identified, and we got to get approval to identify sitting Congress people. Two, it was also judged that some of the details about 2016 were sensational and so required a limited distribution. And although someone blank have consistently pushed for the last 16 months to get this published, people higher in the chain than us, including but not limited to people at the ODNI, time and again failed to make real decisions in a timely manner. And we recently, in February, were told that ODNI had approved the list and the distribution, so we pushed the report to this person for release pending the director of the NSA's approval. Then the deputy director objected to releasing the report as is. Now, the meeting was attended by the deputy director, a bunch of other things redacted. The deputy had proposed several options for how to get through this, explaining that some of the options that he had proposed were non-starters. Again, it's going to name Congress people. And if they're the subject of foreign operations, We need to know that. The president needs to know that. Everybody involved has to know that they would have a problem identifying them, and so we just can't do it, even though the process began months and months, years ago. Now, the deputy director also explained that he was concerned that releasing the thing at this time in the current political climate with acting ODNI, who came in and had been tasked with, according to the deputy director, to quote, clean house in the intelligence community, and with an administration, Trump already, is very suspicious of the intelligence community and aggressive of removing anyone who stands in their way. If we release it, it's going to damage our credibility. He believed that the question would ask as to why the NSA was choosing to release this information now, most obviously pertinent to 2016, now more than a year after blank, and the NSA would be accused of releasing it for political purposes. He puts in quotes, "I lack the courage to point out that we, blank, had processed the information in a timely manner, and the delay in releasing it was due in part to decisions and inaction of everybody here in the room. We're seated here for a meeting talking about this. Why is this not out? You people, we got it to you. It was all produced for you." The deputy director perceived that ODNI, CIA, and FBI, to an extent, had been tarred as hosting or being a part of, quote, the deep state, which they all are, but that the NSA had not been associated with them and was trusted. He felt that publishing this report would destroy that trust. He felt the questioning of the NSA that would ensue would have ramifications for their credibility and their reporting overall, and it would result in morale problems in the workforce, just like when this happened. Now, he repeatedly said that he wanted to protect our ability to be who we are at the NSA, nonpartisan, objective, speaking truth to power, and at one point, he mentioned something about it would be a shame if the boss, meaning the director, lost his job. Both Blank and I got the impression, as we have discussed afterwards, that the deputy was concerned about losing his job and the directors as well. He also said at one point that if we had released the report last April, for instance, then he would not have these concerns about the timing because now we're in the middle of an election year. Okay, that's how it goes. You have info, you don't want to release it too close to the election, otherwise you are James Comey. And then they delay in between the election years so that they can kick it over to the next election year and justify not releasing it again. Again, he says, I lack the courage to rhetorically ask why we didn't do it the year before. So the deputy suggested releasing a different product. Well, how about we just give him that one, where we would summarize and amalgamate the data not yet reported from this, rather than inviting recipients to request that. I pointed out that while we conceivably could do that and make assessments of and comments about the Republican field from 2016, it would not be possible to do so regarding the Democrat field in 2016 because blank analysis of that field concerned only two people, Hillary and Bernie. Bernie's a senator, and so we can't identify him. And I pointed out that releasing this information about blank and the analysis of the Republicans would look even more political. So if we just talk about what the foreigners did to the Republican field and not include the Democrats because we can't name Bernie, then that would be a problem. But there were a bunch of other people running in 16, like Ted Cruz and many others who were also in Congress. So Blank also pointed out that there was a specific FI in the assessments of the Republican candidates that we believe that we could carry forward. For instance, someone's opinion on policies that happen to be supported by those candidates likely remain the same, and thus insight into those opinions on policies could be relevant moving forward, but we still could identify Congresspeople talking about policy preferences and more, and we would be omitting foreign intelligence from the report if we amalgamated all of these assessments and left out the policies. So I reiterated that we believe that there was foreign intelligence value in seeing exactly what the blank said, how they thought, what they assessed in their own words. And someone at one point observed in this meeting, if we choose not to release the report and it came to Congress' attention that we did not release it, then what that would equally invite accusations of politicization from either side. So we discussed a report that I currently have in draft concerning the IRA's preferences and thus their implicit strategy for the 2020 Democratic primary, where we have the same problem of identifying Congresspeople. The deputy director asked whether we could work any of the information from the old report into the new one. I said we could, at least in some part, because it was essentially the same strategy in 2016. And it matched their inferred strategy for 2020, where foreign influence is going to come in. but opined that it would be awkward to include much else given the 2016 strategy about the Republicans didn't have an analog in 2020 because Trump was in the running to get reelected, because the Republican is already decided. So the deputy director repeatedly said that he wanted to get the foreign intelligence info, and he agreed that there was a valid foreign intelligence information in what we wanted to publish to our intelligence customers, the proper users of that, which would of course be the president, and did not want to get it into the hands of those who would abuse it. And he opined that the abusers would overtake and outweigh the users. So if we release this information, some people will exploit it and the actual legitimate people won't be able to use it. Toward the end, he suggested exploring maybe a crazy idea like using the blank process to share the blank with blank, so the analysts there who needed to see this information could have access to it without it being serialized. Now, the meeting ended with a suggestion that we all just chew on it. Someone said that blank would come back with options, and that is the initial memo. It's followed up here with a secondary supplement. Says, I was also asked at one point what the mood in blank was in light of all of this. Redacted point about getting questioned and accused of politicization by the other side if we fail to publish anything included a reference to analysts who had worked hard on the report and who might be disappointed or frustrated that their work had gone for nothing. All these people building this up. Now, I stated plainly that in light of our experience with the blank, we would consider ourselves lucky if the new report concerning 2020 was actually released before the election in November. I said that we did not know why we were here. We're trying to defend the election and identify threats to it if we are unable to actually report what those threats were because of issues like this. We have to get this information out. There's going to be a new threat in 2020. We don't know what it is based on this message, but they've got concerns about it. Why are we even here? Why are we working and even in the NSA if we can't actually generate a report and get it out to the public? So all of that now released, and you can see just what a problem this is. They're so worried about the politics. If we release this and we say that, the Democrats will be mad. If we release this and it's bad for Trump, then he'll be mad. And everybody now is none the wiser. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. And apparently foreign interference is a major problem, according to these analysts, so that they're so frustrated that they can't even get their job done. So Jim Jordan was asked about a lot of this. He posted this one after he showed up over on Fox News. And here's what he said about the weaponization on both sides of the spectrum. We're live. Thank you so much, Congressman. Let's change that audio over. And now we're live.
And for being here, and I want to talk about this.
Hiring the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired the public relations firm Fusion GPS, who hired the foreigner Christopher Steele, who wrote the bogus document called the dossier that Comey takes. He knows it's bogus. He takes it to the secret court, the FISA court, to get a warrant to go spy on President Trump's campaign. That happened. And then when people start digging into that and figuring something out, then it's on to this next thing. He fires Comey and they go after Jeff Sessions. And then, as you point out, they launched this operation a few years later when a number of us are starting to dig into Joe Biden and all the crazy things that went on there with Ukraine and Burisma and his son Hunter Biden. And they run an operation against members of Congress and other people affiliated with or associated with the Trump campaign and the Trump administration.
Right.
That's how ridiculous it was. Running ops against the government. The FBI was doing this.
Yeah, and on the Biden side, of course, it was Russian disinformation. Nobody wanted to pursue that narrative or look into any of the details. But when it came to President Trump, you needed a special counsel investigation where we did get more detail, which was helpful. But when you learn little pieces of the timeline like this, you see just how bad it was.
Yeah, remember, so the Clinton campaign does that. Comey uses that ridiculous document to go spy on President Trump's campaign. 4 years later, they run an operation against members of Congress and members of President Trump's administration to try to help Biden win. So it was always designed to hurt President Trump and help his opponent win. It was designed to help Clinton win in 16, Biden win in 24, and then, frankly, you could say, or in 20, and then in 24, you could say, well, Jack Smith was designed to help Biden or Kamala Harris win and President Trump lose in 24. So they ran operations each and every time President Trump was running for office.
Even as you uncover all of this detail, there are some advisors, like White House advisor Peter Navarro, who says you haven't done enough to investigate some of this weaponization. What is your rebuttal to that?
We've done everything we can. We've referred people for prosecution. We referred John Brennan because we know he lied to us. We referred him 8 months ago to the Justice Department. We just recently referred Jack Smith because he lied to us. He said he only got the records, the phone records of members of Congress. He said he did not get contents of members' communications. And then we find out, oh, he went to the National Archives and got text messages between members of President Trump's administration and members of Congress. And he had that information and didn't tell us that when we deposed him. So he lied to us. We referred him. And we've also referred Thomas Wyndham, one of his deputies, for prosecution as well, because he tried to obstruct our investigation into this whole operation that they're running against President Trump as the special counsel.
And so those referrals are great, but they have to be received. They can only throw the ball from Congress, and then it's up to Todd Blanche or previously Pam Bondi to pick that up and run with it and actually present the evidence to a grand jury or bring the charges through a complaint in federal court. But that hasn't happened yet. We know Todd Blanche is still warming up his chair over there at the DOJ. Hopefully it is coming soon, but we've got multiple people who need justice delivered upon them. And of course, every day that goes by, we're going to continue to see these new documents that come out to just show how exactly deep the problem goes. And what we were told about no evidence of any interference, no evidence of any foreign influence. All of that, of course, lies. And now the truth is coming out the more and more documents we see. Even internally, there were real upset analysts who were explaining how frustrated they were that they couldn't get their work product out in front of anybody meaningful. So we'll keep our eye on this one. More declassified documents hopefully coming soon. Thank you for joining us as we do. Now, let's turn our attention to some more election news. And this one is a curious one. It looks like the New Jersey governor, MIKIE is caving on her demand that there is no further investigation into her admitted voter fraud. We know that there were over 6,000 people who shouldn't have been on the voter list who were on the list, and a subset of them were actually voting in elections as illegal or non-citizens, casting ballots, even though they knew they shouldn't have been doing that. But now Mark Wayne Mullen from Homeland, who's already explained that her limited hangout was actually not very accurate in terms of scope, is saying, thank you, MIKIE. We got news from your Secretary of State that New Jersey will participate with Homeland. Oh, she said we were not going to do that. She actually responded to Harmeet Dhillon at the Civil Rights Division saying, I'm not going to give you any information about the non-citizens who voted illegally, committing federal crimes. Said, I'm going to protect their privacy rights, even though they broke federal law. So now they're going to work together, according to Mark Wayne, in stopping aliens from illegally voting in your state. The 35,000 potential registered aliens that we identified may only be the beginning. Looking forward to helping New Jersey identify illegal voters and ensure election integrity. And so we have not seen anything officially from this governor. It seems like Mark Wayne is kind of, poking her with this thing right now. Wow, you're going to work with us. That's tremendous news. What took you so long? And here, no more updates from her talking about sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln. All right, so we'll see ultimately what that means, what New Jersey will do to facilitate checking of their voter rolls, if much of anything. But Mark Wayne is now dunking on her and having some fun with that. Now, while all this is happening, we're learning that Homeland Security, rather the DHS division of the Justice Department of the DOJ, is now saying that they're going to send election monitors out to a bunch of different states, and a lot more people are going out. We've got Harmeet announcing that the Civil Rights Division is going to be monitoring polling sites in Florida and Wyoming. And in total, we're looking at like hundreds and hundreds of people that will ultimately be deployed over the course of this incoming primary season. Right now, thus far, they've deployed over 75 monitors across 5 states, now aimed at promoting transparency, the open flow of communications, ensuring compliance with federal law, including Voting Rights Act, National Voter Registration Act, HAVA, UOCAVA, and more. While all this is going on, we're asking about state processes. And we have a very interesting set of videos that were released by Scott Pressler on X at The Persistence, saying this is an election judge training video. And she looks like an election judge, absolutely. writing that this was a training video that came out in Carver County in Minnesota just back in 2024. You want to know how to actually run your polls, you got to listen to this lady. And this is in Minnesota where they do the vouching. And here's how the judges there explain how that all works to the poll workers.
Ask them for their name and address. Do not ask a voter to look at the roster themselves to locate their name. Do not ask them to see an identification card. However, if a voter presents identification, thank the voter and inform them that an identification card is not required if they are registered. This announcement is not only for the voter in front of you, but for other voters in line who should not feel required to produce an identification card. In some circumstances, the identification card might be helpful, but make it clear that it is not required. The voter may say that they have a difficult name to spell and provide their identification to make the process easier to find their name. Or a voter might have problems speaking, and so the identification serves as their way of communicating their name and address. Once you know the name and address of the voter, and you are using a paper roster, search and find the voter's name, check the page for any roster notations, hide challenges on other voter records from view, have the voter confirm their name and address, point to the oath at the top of the roster page, and have them review the oath. Instruct the voter to sign their name on the line of the roster page to affirm the voter's oath. Give them a voter receipt and direct them to the ballot judge. Now, if an electronic roster is used, search and find the voter's name, ask the voter to confirm their name and address, and have the voter review the voter's oath. Instruct the voter to sign to affirm the voter's oath. As the judge, you will retain the signed voter signature certificate, issue a ballot receipt to the voter, and direct the voter to the ballot judge. Please note that the signature may be electronic on the screen or on paper, so follow your local election official instructions.
Sometimes it is difficult to find a voter's name. Check for...
Yeah, it's hard because many of them are named Mohammed. And you can vouch. Okay, that's just the point about no ID, first of all. And you don't even need to bring ID at all, as she just mentioned, but you can even just vouch for other people. Here's this guy who they just transitioned to explaining how that process works.
Other types of election day registration options include a registered voter in that precinct who can personally vouch for the identity and residence of up to 8 new voters.
Wow.
A healthcare facility worker can vouch for an unlimited number of residents of facilities that they work for, regardless of where that facility worker lives. A voter can use a notice of late registration sent to them. If a voter is moved within their precinct or has only changed their name, they may use their previous registration in the precinct. For college students, precincts may be provided with a list of students.
So you can vouch for 8 people in Minnesota, as they just mentioned right here, up to 8 new voters' identity and residence. So you just have to basically go find people on the list, and you can just have people come on in there and just say, oh, this is that guy. As long as you know who's on the list. Oh, this is him. How do you prove it? I don't know. There is no way. One person just says, yeah, that's him. Okay. So up to 8, and they can do it basically at will, and there's no ID required. And if you actually present an ID, you kind of get scolded by the judge saying, we don't need that, okay? So that everybody else in line doesn't feel obligated to present an ID, because that would be very difficult for them to grapple with. So while that's happening, of course, we got monitors being deployed across the nation, and the latest are going to be Wyoming and Florida. But here's one secretary who's called Adrian Fontes out of Arizona. And they're very nervous now that Trump will be intimidating voters by sending ICE officials into polling places. Here's what he sounds like in this little meltdown with Jen Psaki. You remember her.
Other objectives you are preparing for, you think they have in sending election monitors out?
Well, I think it goes beyond just election monitors. You know, we've seen the threat of ICE agents at the polls. That threat in and of itself is voter intimidation. It's unnecessary.
How is that voter intimidation? Why would American citizens be intimidated by seeing an ICE official at a polling location? They're citizens. Do they think that they're going to get deported if they're citizens? Otherwise, it seems like the only people who might be actually upset if there's an ICE agent are the non-citizens who are actually there.
Necessary. It's uncalled for. It's not something that should be happening.
Why not?
Saying actively that we're going to be sending DOJ monitors out to polling places and announcing it to the nation. Typically, the DOJ, if they're sending monitors, they will let the jurisdiction know, and the jurisdiction will quietly welcome them. They will see what's going on for the benefit of voters, not for the benefit of some political agenda. So it's a little bit of like they're really out front on this thing, trying to sell it to the public. And that's when you know that there's something wrong.
There's something wrong with your election voter rolls. That's why people need to go out there and monitor your bad actions. All you got to do is just facilitate the sending of your list back over to the DOJ and the Civil Rights Division. They've got powers to inspect those under federal law. We know that many lower level court district judges are not enforcing that power, but that's going to be taken up on appeal and presumably vindicated, as we saw in the dissents out of the Sixth Circuit that we covered previously. Now, in North Carolina, we now have a Democrat governor who, again, is vetoing the GOP's election integrity bill. So the legislature sent this up to the Democrat governor in North Carolina, and he nuked it because everywhere you turn, they do not want election integrity. It's their whole party. He says it was anti-voter legislation. It's against the voters to make sure that everybody's vote actually counts. This bill was known as House Bill 958, vetoed by first-term Democratic governor called Josh Stein late on Monday. It would change early in-person voting for primaries, primary runoffs, and more. It would also require the use of federal databases to validate who's actually on the list. It would mandate the removal of dead voters, and the state auditor's office would conduct post-election audits of county elections at least once every 6 years. That's it. Not even asking for much. Now he says it's going to make it harder for people to vote, and it's going to make it easier to throw out votes they don't like after Election Day. Well, who likes dead people votes on the lists? Oh, Democrats do. For primary, state law says that any voter requesting an absentee ballot shall have one mailed from their county 50 days in advance. The state election board doesn't have the ability to shorten it for 45 days. And he says it's damaging. It's going to eliminate early voting. And they're trying to undermine our democracy by ensuring that dead people aren't on the rolls. So he said, I'm vetoing this anti-voter legislation. I call on everybody to come back and support that. And of course, it's just the same pattern that we see over and over. Any election integrity measures get full-blown attack treatment from the left because the current system favors them and they don't want any changes to it at all. So Harmeet says, we're not playing with that. We're going to ensure that all Americans can have confidence in our elections. It's a top priority of this administration. Should be nonpartisan. It's not. But from the civil rights perspective, they're going to be on top of it.
Elections that all Americans can feel confident in is a high priority of this White House. It's something that I frequently meet with other agency heads on, and Department of Homeland Security is involved in it. The Postal Service is involved in it. And we really want every American to get out there and vote and feel confident in the outcome. That's an important part of it, is not just vote, but also feel like you can accept the outcome of the elections. And over the years, we've had Republicans and Democrats, Hillary Clinton and Stacey Abrams, have both come out and said, they didn't accept the outcome or they didn't like what happened in their particular election. So this is a bipartisan issue and it's a bipartisan problem, and we want people from both sides to be able to accept those results.
To return to
we do, but they don't. They want only one party to control the election mechanics, and if they have to cede any ground on that, we saw yesterday Jocelyn Benson is doing everything that she can to encourage the rapid deletion of election records in violation of federal law. She's being sued for that. She's historically tried to change the signature requirements and more. The list goes on and on and on, because if they can control the rules, they can control the outcome, just like in any game that anybody plays. And any attempts to fix the system results in you getting labeled anti-voter, even though every dead person who votes, every illegal alien who votes is an anti-voter policy, because it is watering down and stripping away a legitimate vote from an actual citizen. So we've got updates in New Jersey. We'll see ultimately what this little agreement looks like, what the news is from the secretary in New Jersey, who's now going to be working with Homeland. Hopefully it's the first domino in many to fall, and we start to get actual compliance from the Democratic Party. But let's not hold our breath. We'll keep our eye on the election news. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, now let's get over to the guilty plea and take a look at what's happening in this one. Top Fauci advisor now pleading guilty. He entered this in court, all hitting the docket today, fresh out of the oven. And we've got the plea deal queued up here to assess exactly why he took this deal and what it might mean for Fauci and the other co-conspirators. We've also got the statement of the facts here that articulates exactly what he did, what the criminal conduct was that he is now admitting to. And so we'll hit the highlights of both, starting with the actual terms of the agreement. So one count is going to be the charge. It is going to be conspiracy to commit offenses and to defraud the United States in violation of U.S. code. He says, I am in fact guilty. The elements of the offense being that he, with at least one other person, was in a conspiracy to commit offenses, including knowingly joining the conspiracy, and one of the members knowingly performed an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Now, the penalty might be pretty low here. Minimum prison time of 0 years, maximum of 5 years. We'll see ultimately what his sentence looks like. And other aspects of the plea deal are just largely boilerplate. We've gone through many plea deals here. We know that if you enter a guilty plea, you don't get to suddenly turn around and appeal it. You don't suddenly get to turn around and demand that you have a trial. It wraps up the case so you don't get to present evidence and issue subpoenas and more. Now, if he went to trial, we know the government would have to prove this. He would have the right to testify and more. But by pleading guilty, he's going to be giving those up. Now, all of these are advisory sentencing guidelines. There is a factual basis for this. There'll be some upward and downward departures based on various aspects here, and waives his right to appeal. He has to behave himself prior to sentencing. This is the entire agreement signed by U.S. Attorney called Kelly O'Hays and signed actually officially by Joseph Baldwin. And then the guy's name is David Morens. This is the guy who is sending emails back and forth with Peter Daszak from EcoHealth Alliance and apparently getting some really nice gifts sent over to him and making some good moolah on the back end. So Timothy Belovitz is his lawyer saying, I've given him all this advice and he's entering this plea deal of his own free will and wants to do the deal. Now, here are the facts. You have to plead guilty to things that actually happened. You can't go in and say, I murdered JFK. I'd like to plead guilty if you didn't actually murder JFK because you weren't even born yet. But here is what he's agreeing actually happened. And what's curious about this is you'll notice we've got co-conspirator 1 and co-conspirator 2 and others who may also be the subject of further scrutiny. So here they write, on or about March 13, 2020, Trump declared a nationwide emergency. The COVID was spreading around. Then on March 15th, states began to implement restrictive measures. Businesses were shuttered, schools closed, millions became sick, over 1 million Americans died. As the nation braced itself for impact, we sought answers about all this. Having a profound impact, we looked to our agencies to get their opinions. Now, this defendant, David Morens, plus co-conspirator 1 and 2 and others, they conspired to defraud the United States. They committed offenses by hiding from public view various federal records that had significant historical events inside, and all of this during an emergency. More details. Now, specifically, in or about April 2020 and continuing through at least June 23, Morens was at the office of the director of the NIAID. He was a senior advisor to senior NIAID official 1. That's most likely the Fauci. Conspired with other people, co-conspirator 1 and 2, and others to defraud the United States by destroying records. These were products of the Health and Human Services, NIH, NIAID, did not actually comply with FOIA requests. He destroyed and concealed records and concealed them and attempted to do the same. So all of that bypassing the proper discharge of his federal duties. Now, at all times here, David Morens was a resident of Maryland, worked at NIH in Maryland as a senior advisor to Fauci and as captain of the Public Health Service. He was a high-ranking official. He had sensitive information and substantial influence over decision-making policy. He gathered information from grantees and others in the scientific community to establish the true nature of the COVID, and also assisted others, including senior official one Fauci, briefing others, briefed the president, briefed Congress and the public. Now, DHHS was also an agency of the United States, and at all times, co-conspirator one was the president and CEO of Company One, presumably that's EcoHealth Alliance, and Peter Daszak. Nonprofit headquartered in New York, stated mission of fighting diseases, even though he made this one. Through Company One, they researched origins and they said, oh, we're studying zoonotic bat viruses and more. They got a big fat award from the NIAID and NIH to go study the risk of bat coronavirus emergence. And they took that cash and went over to Wuhan. Co-conspirator two was another physician, scientist, and professor who worked at an academic institution and also was named as a co-investigator with co-conspirator one in this process. So all of these agencies administered the FRA and FOIA. Under the FRA, the federal record encompassed all recorded information. So these agencies have to keep and maintain business records. Some of those records are emails. You're not supposed to use a personal email account to conduct your business. And records that were only personal and devices were not supposed to be used for official business. Morens knew that, and he received requests under FOIA for emails and other documents, and he knew that the only FOIA officers had the authority to actually go grant exemptions. He knew that there were deadlines when one of these requests came in. He knew that he would have to respond. So then, on or about April 17th, President Trump acknowledged his awareness about the grant funding the Chinese research. NIH issued a letter notifying Company One, EcoHealth, that it was reviewing allegations that Wuhan released a coronavirus and instructed the company to cease providing any funds to Wuhan. So EcoHealth now gets cut off. Then April 24th, NIH emailed again Daszak and said, you're terminated, okay? You probably engineered this thing. You probably wrecked the planet with your little experiments, and now you're terminated. He then forwarded it to co-conspirator two. Co-conspirator one sent it to him, and two urged him to challenge this. He said, well, hold on a minute, challenge it, but first let's get this other source of funding. The Emerging Infectious Disease Regional Center was going to give them a grant for $7 million, and that money had not come through yet. So before you start raising a stink about this, and by the way, he's pleading guilty to this. He agrees all this happened. Before we start to challenge this, let's make sure we get our $7 million in cash. Now, on or about April 25, after learning about the cancellation of that moolah, Morens forwarded his communications with co-conspirator one and two over to his Gmail personal account, and then emailed them, hi, quote, this is from my Gmail account. Please send all replies over here. There are things I can't say, except that Fauci is aware, that senior NIAID official one is aware, and I have learned that there are ongoing efforts within the NIH to steer this through with minimal damage to you. Okay, so that means Fauci, presuming he's NIAID 1, which I believe he is, he was trying to keep them getting paid. Okay, you want to keep them happy since they have all of the evidence about exactly what happened, and you gave them the original grant, which is why this whole thing happened. Then on April 26, co-conspirator one, Daszak, also wrote back to Morens, Fauci's advisor, and co-conspirator two, with copies to others, including staff, saying, hi, David, we'll communicate with you via Gmail from now on. So company now using personal emails. Thereafter, Morens and co-conspirator one and two and others plotted to repeatedly express their intention to conceal federal records from FOIA. We're going to evade all of this and provide info to Fauci that was favorable to Daszak and the company. As part of their conspiracy, they did the following. One, they used personal Gmail accounts to actually do their communications and to transfer records. The federal records that were created were all sent via personal non-governmental email address, included the following types of details, which were massive: NIH work product, records concerning efforts to influence the NIH to literally fund Company One, making sure they get their money. All other records concerning the company's back coronavirus grant termination, reinstatement, all of the back and forth on that. They were sending back and forth drafting replies for public writings about the origin of the COVID so that it wasn't on federal books. Other records about grants, records concerning Morens' access to Fauci and his use of that access to convey information on behalf of EcoHealth Alliance over to influence Fauci. All off the books. They also concealed, removed, and destroyed other records. They concealed their communications so that they could utilize Morens' status and his connections to Fauci to advance the interest of the company. And only one guy has been indicted on this. The other people who are a part of this company did not. They concealed their communications so that they could communicate with others in the scientific community, talk about papers and more, but without directly including co-conspirator one, Peter Daszak, in the comms to generate the appearance of a disinterested scientific consensus and to avoid the necessity of declaring competing interest. They also policed the use of his government email account. They reminded him many times over, stop using your government email, idiot. Stop using it and only contact Morens through non-governmental email addresses. They also sent him information saying, hey, David, give this to Fauci while instructing Morens to use comms that were not going to be subject to FOIA so that nobody could find out about this fraud. Now, they also shared facts, press reports about the origin of the vid, information about the administrative proceeding on the coronavirus grant, information about congressional inquiries, and about the drafting of articles, developing talking points, and more. Now, as part of the conspiracy, Daszak provided and promised Morens things of value and said, we appreciate your, quote, behind the scenes shenanigans. You're doing a great job for me and EcoHealth. Now, for his part, Morens agreed to accept those things, and he said it was because of his official acts. Yes, I'll do this thing for you. Send me some more wine. Now, also in furtherance of the conspiracy, other things identified in the indictment, saying even others committed and caused the commission of numerous other overt acts. And Morens agrees with each part of these overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy, and unless indicated otherwise, all comms were sent using the private Gmail. Writing. He also got gratuities. In May 2020, Morens emailed Peter about an article. Morens was drafting this to exonerate EcoHealth. We all agree that we want to keep off of it any fingerprints of you, some other scientist number one, and company one or grant colleagues. He said back to him in an email, I need to keep this off government email and government phone text because I'm writing a PR piece for your company, the very company that was engineering the vid. On or about June 1, Morens emailed co-conspirator one, Peter, again from his email, a government email. He said, let's win this anti-science battle, get you refunded and Uber funded, and then settle scores and kick some ass. That's official on the record. So then in June, Daszak gave Morens 2 bottles of the Prisoner Red Napa Valley wine. Wow, that sounds nice. Which was delivered to his residence in Maryland. The wine included the following message to David from Peter. Writes, this is the first of what I hope will be a continued series of expressions of gratitude for your advice, support, and behind-the-scenes shenanigans in my battle against your boss's boss, Trump, his boss and the ultimate boss on the Hill. Now, it takes courage and commitment to do what you've done, given your job and the vindictive nature of the administration, Trump. I'm eternally grateful for that, and I hope I will be able to return the favor one day. In the meantime, cheers. Have some nice wine from Napa Valley. So then in June, after he got the wine, Morens emailed Peter from his Gmail. He said, wow, it was so good. Now I am actually going to have to do something to deserve it. Let me think, ... What can I do? Send you a photo of my nipples? What the hell's going on here? Morens then identified acts that he had performed, including, he says, well, just so you know, I mean, I really like the wine, send me some more. I've already written scientific commentary that outlines the importance of what you and Peter Daszak have been doing, but I didn't mention the grant termination. So then in June, Daszak again emails Morens and his Gmail account promising more things of value. Wine was just phase 1, okay? This is going to be phase 2. Phase 3 might actually involve a meal, like a Michelin-starred restaurant opening in Paris or DC or New York. That will do eventually. Then in July, a couple weeks go by, Morens submitted and caused the submission of a scientific commentary to a prominent article in a journal that said the vid came from nature and definitely not from Peter Daszak's lab because he has great wine and I want to go hang with him in Paris. Morens was listed as an author on the article. The commentary was to benefit EcoHealth and Peter Daszak and was funded in part by the intramural research program by the NIAID and the NIH. Okay, so he's a cheap date, man. You send him some wine, you send him some cookies or whatever, and all of a sudden, he's exonerating your entire company under the guise and label of the federal government. Then in October, now we fast forward a bit, 2021, it continues on. An email with the subject line says, second batch of emails possibly FOIA'd. Daszak emails Morens again on Gmail and others to identify emails sent from Morens' NIH account. Suddenly they get hit with a FOIA. They start freaking out. Hey, man, what did you send to us? In the email, co-conspirator 1 Daszak specifically referenced one email. He said, hey, Morens, go back and delete the email about the bottle of wine. Said it's not absolutely cut and dried that this happened, but it gives that impression. So get rid of it. He also opined, I believe if the wine has a value of $20 or less, that's fine. And I sent you garbage wine in a box or something. But you got to go fix that. What did you send? Let me know. They panic. It's a year later. All of a sudden, now they're trying to engage in the cover up. Then they also actually met with Fauci. Then in April 21, Morens and Daszak, with copies to others, also exchanged emails saying, we've got a Zoom meeting with Fauci tomorrow. In the body of the email, Morens described various topics related to the Zoom meeting, including, quote, what info or docs co-conspirator 1, Daszak, would or would not want Morens to share, and issues that Fauci would be concerned about, including the possibility that NIH, our people, funded scientists who are in cahoots with politicians wanting to attack him. So are you with the Trump people or are you with Fauci? Morens added that it might be best to connect you two in an off-the-record manner. We are getting FOIA'd nonstop, so it's most important that Fauci not have anything on the record that could come back to bite us. So then in April, again, same day, Daszak emails Morens about the Zoom meeting. And he says, please feel free to share any docs that I've sent you with Fauci. Hopefully you can do that in a way that avoids FOIA, if not possible. Just show him the stuff on a screen share on Zoom. Don't send anything, just put it on the screen. He attached a document about, quote, political actions regarding EcoHealth Alliance's work on coronavirus. So now he's like, look at all the good work that we've done on behalf of you. So then in March 21, Morens used his government computer to make edits and comments to a written response to 2 letters from the NIH deputy director over to EcoHealth Alliance, the BAT coronavirus grant. Now people are asking questions. Morens, the Fauci advisor, was aware that the letter would be read by the deputy director and others. So he says, let me get in there and edit it for you. I'll write it exactly how they want to read it so that you don't get in trouble. He says, quote, this will probably be read by the deputy director, but will perhaps be leaked and read by others. Below is one of the comments that Morens made in the letter. He says, Peter, in this paragraph, you might say that the lab was built under international safety engineering standards, adheres to international safety practice standards, and the lead Wuhan staff were trained in the safety in the United States by a known authority running BSL-4 labs in Texas. You might also say that despite the claim of one individual, no safety concerns are known to have been alleged by others, including the other safety experts. So let me help you craft your PR response. This going over to a private company called EcoHealth Alliance. We're being backstabbed by our own government officials on behalf of this third party. Then in April 21, Daszak submitted or caused to be submitted that actual letter that Morens edited. Now, Daszak did not disclose that Morens drafted it. Then in October, we fast forward, Daszak and Morens exchanged more emails. One says, quote, good news from Wuhan regarding the experiments that NIH is trying to throw us under the bus with, because they're like, you guys made this thing. Daszak noted that Fauci had mentioned administrative consequences for EcoHealth, having filed their progress report late. Then asked Morens, David, could you give Fauci a heads up about this so he doesn't say the wrong thing publicly, and also so it doesn't disparage us any further? He responded, yeah, before I speak to him, can you clarify more specifically? Daszak responds with more of an explanation. I'm going to send you a draft letter in a few minutes. I'm getting ready to send over to the deputy at the NIH. This will clarify all of this with more backup evidence. October 24th comes down. Daszak emails Morens and co-conspirator 2 and chief of staff at EcoHealth. Draft response to the deputy at NIH, please review. He wrote that he was trying to rapidly respond to the letter. They start asking him about Wuhan, as well as to the public statement that Company 1 failed to comply with reporting restrictions in connection with the back coronavirus grant. So now Daszak at EcoHealth is thinking that they're going to get fingered for this whole thing. And so he's like trying to fix this. He attached several documents, including a letter and a docx file. And he then finished the email by stating, David, I'll send some bullets for you to pass on to Fauci for later on. And Fauci's got an interest in covering it up because his agency gave the grant. On or about then, October 25, 21, Daszak emails Morens again. Okay, short response here with our bullets for sharing. Attached to the email was a single sheet with bullet points to, quote, convince folks at the NIH that the deputy director was wrong to criticize EcoHealth. Referencing the prior letter that had been circulated, Morens responded. He said, this is excellent. I'll suggest some wordsmithing tweets later today, colluding with them. On or about October 25th, then co-conspirator 2 replied to the email. And he said the following. He left Morens off the email. He said, I just spent some time on the phone with David. He is concerned about the privacy of text and other messages from his cell phone to you because he has been using a government phone, which permits personal conversations as well. So even things via Gmail sent and received on a cell phone could be FOIA-able. Man, they're just so dumb. Like, get a burner cell phone. He's on his government phone, logged into his Gmail account, and he's like, it's my personal account. It's like, just get a separate phone. These are the people in charge of our national health and during an emergency. It's why everything was such a disaster. Then co-conspirator 2 communicated Morens' edits and suggestions to co-conspirator 1, Daszak, about the draft letter, stating Morens wanted to reiterate a couple of things. He's pleading guilty to all of this, by the way. First, on the timeline to make it more specific with dates, saying it's really important and being sure he is well informed, acknowledges the timeline and the communications because he's going to be asked about it. Morens also suggested that you discuss with him the need for NIH to check the records and confirm when the documents were filed, and that when you were aware that it was necessary to file the 5-year report, the system shut you out and presumed that this was a normal process as you were then into the new grant year 1. In October, Daszak submits the letter after Morens gives him suggestions and explains what this 5-year failure to submit a timely report was all about. So in sum, at the conclusion, Morens knowingly and willfully conspired with EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak and co-conspirator 2 and others to evade FOIA and violate the Federal Records Act by concealing, destroying, and attempting to destroy federal records, and used to facilitate his work as a public official and senior advisor to Fauci. All agreed to, stipulated here by David Morens. And Fauci was the subject of a lot of this, right? A lot of this was being used to go to Fauci and to convince him. But does that make Fauci knowledgeable about this effort and this conspiracy? I would argue that, yes, it does. Fauci knew everything about EcoHealth Alliance and was very familiar with the grant and the scam that was happening over there in Wuhan. He got into it with Rand Paul multiple times in congressional testimony, saying it wasn't gain-of-function research, even though it clearly was, just changed the definition in order to exonerate himself. But what can we glean from this? Is Morens now going to have some sort of evidence that he can turn and use against Fauci? Will these other co-conspirators get hit with charges or indictments? We'll have to wait and see. But as it stands right now, we've got a plea deal and we've got sentencing orders that have now come down. So on or before 9/25, we'll have some more requirements that need to be submitted to the court. Probation shall give us their pre-sentence report if the defendant is not in custody. Then on 10/9, counsel shall submit their objections to the pre-sentence report. Probation officer, if there are objections, shall investigate. Then finally file their report. We're going to have a sentencing hearing. If you want to call witnesses, please disclose that by October 29th. Sentencing memos are not required, but if you are going to submit one, get those in by the end of October. Then I want them delivered to my chambers by November 5th. If you're going to be asking for restitution, get those documents submitted, and then we'll be back for sentencing on November 12th at 10 a.m. So, lot of time ahead. And look who was the presiding judge on this one. Paula Zenas. Paula Zenas, United States District Court judge out of Maryland. That's the same judge who handled the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. So if she's doing sentencing, Morens is going to get off. He's going to get probation, 100%, because she's going to protect this apparatus against what she's going to reframe as a Trump campaign of retribution. She's a full-blown, bona fide leftist, which means she's going to protect the leftist operators. Anybody in Fauci's orbit is going to get a tiny little slap on the wrist, if anything. She may even apologize to him. So I'm not optimistic that he's going to get anything on this upper end of the range just simply because of the judge and the allegations here. But we do have a senior advisor to Fauci now pleading guilty for doing unethical things, burying evidence, trying to hide information to make it immune from any FOIA requests. And that is a start in the right direction. So hopefully he identifies other people. I don't know what the terms of the plea negotiations were and whether or not there's any, agreement, or he has given other information or agreed to testify in other cases. But as it stands, we've got a guilty plea. Hopefully we see many more to come. So we're going to keep our eye on this one. We'll be back for sentencing in November. We'll see what happens then. All right. And speaking of Abrego and Kilmar, the alleged human trafficker, we've got one final update on the day. And then we'll hear from you. The DOJ now firing back in a fiery appellate memorandum going after the alleged wife-beating, human trafficking, illegal alien called Kilmar Abrego Garcia. This case has been pretty quiet for a while. We know that previously it was dismissed by another judge out of Tennessee who said that the whole thing was vindictive and selective prosecution. But the DOJ is saying it is absolutely not, Judge, and you are dead wrong. Now, if you forgot, here's a snippet of the body camera footage from when Kilmar was trafficking a truckload of non-citizens through the country and was stopped by Tennessee Highway Patrol. They didn't arrest him, even though he was driving on an illegal license. He had no valid license, couldn't find proof of insurance, was clearly in violation of other harnessing laws like no seatbelts for all the people in the back. And here's what the cops did is they called the FBI, and the FBI said, let him go. We don't care. We want more of this to happen. All of this taking place in 2022 under Joe Biden's invasionary stature. Here's a little bit more on the conversation between Tennessee Highway Patrol and Kilmar with his truckload full of illegals.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
Good, and you?
All right.
Everything good?
You got a bunch of people in here, don't you?
It's 1 for sick. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where are you working at?
Where?
Where?
San Luis, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm from Maryland.
Okay. Now, the reason I stopped you, we was running 75 down through here.
75?
Yeah. Of course, this is 65 through here.
Speeding.
I'm going to 70.
Going 70?
Yeah, what's the limit right now? Is 70 or 65?
It's 65.
I can see it, sir.
You got all your
Because
info?
I see the speed limit. I see the...
Yeah, it jumps up and down.
Like that.
Yeah, your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance.
Oh my God. Okay, sure.
You what?
The problem with my license
What?
right now is expired, right?
Oh.
It's suspended?
Suspended because
Suspended, yeah.
I have my permanent employment, so like 2 years experience. So I need. So right now I waiting the paper for migration for I go to the
Got
NBA.
it.
So you know.
Audio is blocked out.
That car no is mine, sorry, to my boss.
Okay, now I don't know about other states, but in Arizona, if you're driving on a suspended license, they just impound your car. You're not allowed to do that. You're on the road illegally, and you're a liability to anybody else if you hit and kill them because you don't have a license. The cops just can't let you go. But in Tennessee, they did. So he has no license. He's got no insurance. There's a lot of additional bad facts in here that we'll see what the DOJ articulates for us. But they knew that this dude was trafficking humans and even had a conversation about it right here at the tail end of this body cam saying, you know what's going on here, don't you?
Okay.
You know what you got, right? You know what you got here, right?
No.
He's hauling these people for money, is what he's doing. But
yeah.
Sometimes they commingle dope.
No, but
there's 8 people in there.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know that. They put an extra row of seats in there.
Yeah. So he's getting paid to haul these people, probably to Maryland, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, so you commit a crime like this, you get arrested, your car gets impounded, you get charged in Arizona with a misdemeanor. It's not a joke. And you got to pay hundreds of dollars to get your vehicle out. It's a big problem. But you're not an illegal alien. You're a citizen. So you don't get due process premium. In this case, they let him go, even though he had a bunch of other illegal aliens in the back of the car with him. And so here's a little bit of a breakdown on how this went down. There's a lot of procedural history to this case. All of that occurred back on November 30th, 2022. There was a traffic stop. They knew this was suspicious. There was no luggage. He was on the wrong route. They commented he's trafficking people. But Highway Patrol out of Tennessee releases him. They call the FBI. FBI says, let him go. So then HSI Baltimore, they open up an MS-13 because he's not just some random, single party human trafficker. He's working with MS-13 as tattooed on his fingertips, smuggling illegal aliens. Then in March 2025, Trump comes in. They identify this dude, you're gone. Afuera, out to El Salvador, enjoy it in CCOT. Once he's gone, Homeland closes the investigation because there's no reason to continue to prosecute somebody who's out. Then a bunch of the pro-immigration hack lawyers who would never fight for you if you were involved in a case like this went to go to bat for an illegal alien MS-13 gangbanging, wife-beating piece of garbage. So then Abrego gets all these lawyers and they sue in Maryland. They get Judge Zenas, who presides over the case. She orders the return of this MS-13 gangbanger back into the United States, goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. SCOTUS kind of upholds the return order. They say with due deference to the executive branch. Time goes by. Long story short, he comes back. Then what we see is the Tennessee Star, an journalist media company, they actually get the body camera video. So they pull that from Tennessee Highway Patrol. That comes out. Once he's back in the United States, then HSI reopens the case. They say, we found new evidence, and so we're going to now bring this back up. Just like any other case. Okay, murder goes cold. You don't have a murder weapon, find the weapon, reopen the case. So then McGuire, who is one of the lead investigators, he finds new witnesses, he gets phone records, he looks at plate reader data to see where this guy was coming from and going from. May 21 comes down, grand jury indicts him. Boom, 2 counts of federal charges. Then in June, he actually does come back to the United States. So I misspoke, he wasn't here yet. Then comes back in June. And then he gets more lawyers who go to bat for him way harder than they would for any citizen, file a motion to dismiss for vindictive prosecution. The judge, Waverly Crenshaw out of Tennessee, hears the case and grants it. There's an evidentiary hearing. The investigator comes in and the U.S. attorney explains, I made the decision on my own. I was not ordered by Trump to do this. Nobody like Todd Blanche mandated I prosecute him again. I made the decision independently. Then Crenshaw dismisses the indictment. It's vindictive, and I'm going to utilize this concept called a presumption of vindictiveness. Completely ridiculous. So then now we start to appeal this thing to the Sixth Circuit, and we just get the appellate memorandum from the DOJ. A couple of key points here. They say that Crenshaw's dismissal is invalid because there never should have been a presumption of vindictiveness. You need to actually do the analysis on it. You can't presume it. They walk us through. They say McGuire had no personal stake in the Maryland case at all, completely separate. It never even applies to initial indictments. And all of these charging decisions were objectively reasonable based on the facts that we're going to look at a little bit more closely. Now, even if a presumption of vindictiveness applied, we rebutted it. We showed the prosecutor acted independently. He had no outside input in the charging. And the evidence that was new from the Tennessee Highway Patrol and the further investigation rebuts the presumption. You might even presume that we're vindictive, but I'll show you that we're not because of the new evidence. So here's the memo now. We've got the announcement from the DOJ, opening brief in the appeal of U.S. versus Abrego Garcia, the most favored individual in the American criminal justice system, perhaps of all time. He has been ordered back into the country, case gone up to the Supreme Court, had a federal judge dismiss the case based on vindictiveness. And that's just one illegal alien. How many others are there that are going through this process? So now we're taking this up out of the Sixth Circuit. And here's what the DOJ has explained. Let's take a look at the highlights. It's a big filing, so we'll hit the key components here. But up to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. This is the United States of America versus Kilmar, Armando Abrego, wife-beating, human trafficking Garcia. On appeal from Waverly Crenshaw, now working its way up, fast-forwarding through the table of contents. And here's how they open this puppy. They write, when an illegal alien is suspected of committing crimes in the United States, we can deal with the threat to law and order in several ways. One, we can remove them so that he can no longer engage in crimes here. Or the government can prosecute him to punish him and to deter others. The government can pursue both options. And this happens often. They are often prosecuted and then removed. And should the government first pursue removal, we might hit a snag. If that happens, we don't need to give up. If we deport them and they come back, we can prosecute them. We don't need to give up. We can change course and we can prosecute. There's nothing remarkable about this, nothing unlawful at all, even if the antecedent removal dispute is controversial. Here are the facts. In 2022, Tennessee police stopped Kilmar, an illegal alien and national of El Salvador, and reported him to DHS based on evidence that he was human smuggling. Among other things, his stated route of travel made no sense. The vehicle was full of passengers who, despite being on a long-distance road trip, had no luggage. But the Homeland investigation stalled. And then Abrego was removed. Case was closed. After a federal court, Zenas in Maryland, ordered Abrego's return, then DHS opened it back up. And the acting U.S. attorney out of Tennessee, Robert McGuire, he separately began investigating the 2022 traffic stop once the body cam came out. He ultimately gathered strong evidence of Abrego's guilt and got a grand jury indictment for human smuggling for financial gain. Now, in the decision under review, Zenas, and in this case, Crenshaw, dismissed the indictment, saying that this prosecution was retaliation, saying he beat you in civil court in Zenas land, and now you're trying to attack him. Even though the lower court acknowledged that the evidence here was insufficient to establish actual vindictiveness, okay, a term of art. So instead of finding actual vindictiveness, because there's no evidence of that, he said, I'll just presume there's vindictiveness. And this is something that's never happened before. A measure no court has taken before, which required findings that the prosecutor literally had a personal stake in the lawsuit, which he never did. So this is a grave error. And again, you would never get this benefit. If your son, if your daughter is being prosecuted in federal court, no judge in America is going to say, I'm just going to make up case law to exonerate your son. The district court gravely erred here. First, it's undisputed that the U.S. attorney had no stake in his removal lawsuit in Maryland. No evidence about that at all. And no evidence that anyone pressured the prosecutor or induced McGuire to charge Abrego. And second, nothing unreasonable about indicting him for serious crimes. Although the district court viewed the timing of the charges as suspicious, the return was a legitimate motive. He's back in the country. He's not here. We don't need to prosecute him. Now he's back. Now we do. So we've easily rebutted any presumption of vindictiveness, period. And the Supreme Court has already made this clear, but the lower courts judge broad and amorphous conception of presumption of vindictiveness would dangerously expand that conduct and include basically everything. And so now you should reverse. Here's more details about just how bad this underlying case was. Abrego stopped by Highway Patrol November 30th, 2022. Suspicious behavior showed he might be smuggling people. The car was full of people who were supposedly on a trip to Maryland, had no luggage. The car was also registered to somebody called Hernandez Reyes. Who's Hernandez? A convicted human trafficker. Wow. That's new facts. And Abrego claimed that he was driving from St. Louis to Baltimore, but Putnam County was nowhere near that route at all. So he lied. The Baltimore investigative component of Homeland opened an investigation, and they were asking about his involvement with MS-13. The investigation was open for years without anything further. Then in March, Homeland arrested Abrego, shipped him on out of here. Now, Abrego filed his suit through his wife in Maryland, and the court ordered him to come back. The court was skeptical the government could back up his claim that he was an MS-13 gangbanging terrorist. Then the Supreme Court granted in part and denied in part, saying that they acknowledged the government believed he was MS-13, but the court upheld the order, saying facilitate his return. Wild, our Supreme Court ordered the return of a terrorist. Then Maryland directed the government to say, bring him back as soon as possible. So we did. Then they had closed the investigation by the time he got back. And now, at the time, Robert McGuire was the acting attorney. And another special agent in HSI Nashville called McGuire and told him, hey, Rana is her name. I learned from a news source about the traffic stop. Tennessee Star breaks the case. Agent Saud Rana informed McGuire that we'd already interviewed a bunch of other witnesses. One person was Hernandez Reyes, the convicted human trafficker, went and interviewed him. And he told interviewers, this convicted trafficker said, yeah, Abrego is a human smuggler. He's in the operation. He works as a driver. So then the prosecutor began looking into the smuggling operation that night. He called the head of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. He wanted to learn about the traffic stop and whether there was body-worn camera or dash camera there and how quickly I could see it. Upon review, McGuire, the prosecutor at the federal level, was immediately struck by how similar the conduct was to other human smuggling cases he'd worked on. Then later, he got an email from another person called Akash Singh. This person coordinates logistics across the country and acted quickly. Prosecution team re-interviewed Hernandez Reyes, the convicted smuggler. Also interviewed a new witness in Texas who had independent information about the scheme. The witness that was not in custody did not have an obvious motive to try to fabricate a story and actually corroborated Hernandez, right? The argument for the defense for Kilmar, Papusa Boy, is that this person in custody will say anything that he possibly can to get out of custody. So they caught somebody else and said, what did you say? Same thing, matches. She detailed her texting relationship with Abrego and his numerous invitation for her to join him on trips, even though she was a minor. What a pervert. Yeah, why don't you come with me, young lady? Sick freak. Additional evidence pointed to Abrego's criminal conduct as well. Hernandez Reyes' phone contact described Abrego as the chauffeur in his contacts. Prosecutor got the phone records that showed Abrego called Hernandez Reyes during the traffic stop. He told the trooper that he was calling his boss, to whom the car was registered. Who was that? Hernandez. Also, records showed that he had called Hernandez during the traffic stop. That corroborates what Hernandez was saying. He called me. And the prosecutor also got license plate reader data that showed that Abrego had been driving where he was not previously in St. Louis. He told the trooper that's where he was coming from, lied. Instead, he was in Texas. Another criminal defendant involved in the same scheme provided additional information that matched the other cooperators as well. And so, consistent then with normal practices, prosecutor sketched out potential charges, started to draft the criminal complaint, but then sought an indictment instead and was going to present it the following week. So then he did that. He went to a grand jury. And when he communicated with Singh, the liaison, he wasn't asking for permission. He wanted to make sure that department officials were knowing about this. We were going to seal the indictment, get ready for publicity because Abrego is already in the news as a hero of illegal alienville. And you guys got to get prepared for this. So the office also needed help bringing Abrego back into custody so that we could charge him. So then Tennessee, boom, indicts him. 2 counts, unlawful transportation of illegal aliens. Then, of course, he comes back into the United States. He moved to dismiss this because he said it's vindictive. In opposing the motion, we submitted declarations from the government saying, we got no direction from the White House, okay? The DOJ didn't order us to do this. I got my own independent evidence here. The district court reserved ruling on this and said that Abrego had not shown actual vindictiveness, but then referenced Todd Blanche. So he said, well, Todd said something on a cable show. The court characterized Blanche of having revealed the government investigation into Abrego after Zenas said you can't deport him. Blanche actually in the interview said, we deported him, we got him out of here. And then Marilyn Zenas said, order him back. And the whole media went hog wild calling him the Maryland man, even though he's an MS-13 gang member. How much attention in the news cycle did this stupid case suck out of the lifeblood of the new Trump administration? Regardless, the court found that Blanche's statement and others fall short of actual vindictiveness. They require an inference that ties them to actual decision makers. So Blanche can say whatever he wants. Did that statement influence the prosecutor who ultimately brought the charges? Instead, the court viewed the questionable motives of others as sufficient to taint the prosecution, inferring that there's a realistic likelihood that other senior officials induced McGuire to do this, and that the timing of the reopening of this was sufficient to, quote, presume vindictiveness. I can't actually find actual vindictiveness, but I'll just presume that it happened. We had an evidentiary hearing. People came in and testified. Agents explained that McGuire alerted her to a potential crime in her district. But again, nobody said anything other than we were never directed to do this. McGuire took the stand. I alone made the decision to do this. Neither Blanche nor anybody else put pressure on me at all. Here's the testimony. McGuire said, question, and so no one outside of Nashville provided any input whatsoever to the charging documents? No, sir. Not Mr. Singh? No, sir. You ever spoken to Blanche directly about this? About the charges? No. About the charging decision? That was my decision. I never talked to Blanche, Emil Bove, anybody at Homeland that wasn't the case agent. The charging decision was what I made. I didn't talk to any of those people. And I really kind of didn't want to because I wanted to make it. I wanted to feel good about it on my own. So the district court didn't care. It's vindictive, case dismissed. He gets America premium version. And after ruling that the facts did not show actual vindictiveness, then the court applied the doctrine of presumptive vindictiveness. So he can't meet this standard. So he said, I'm suspicious about the reopening of the case, and I don't like Blanche's testimony. And there was oversight by Singh, the liaison between all of the various districts in the United States on behalf of the DOJ. All of that was sufficient, so case dismissed. Crazy. So then the court concluded the government failed to rebut this, and it didn't even address the government's interest in prosecuting criminal aliens. Even though the court said the evidence was new to Mr. McGuire, The court ruled the evidence could have been discovered with due diligence before, and since you closed it and then reopened it, I'm going to find that that's bad. Now, their argument is that you are actually erroneous at every single step. Prosecutor had no stake in the civil case at all. The district court did not find that he did. It implied a vindictive taint theory and said that even in that argument, the government, the prosecution was saying we're completely separate. The judge said you still have a taint on you. Also saying that he missed his whole point, that a presumption of vindictiveness does not extend to the pretrial phase of proceedings. Talk about that at trial, but this is a brand new case. We have no stake in the conduct before the charges are brought. And so you brought it too soon. And also concluded that the prosecutor's conduct was unreasonable. But the government has an obviously reasonable reason to prosecute people like Abrego. Nothing suspect in electing to not to prosecute a criminal alien and remove them. And then when they're ordered back to say, oh, okay, I guess now we'll prosecute him. The timeline all confirms legitimate motives. The district court simply confused prosecutorial discretion because of immigration consequences with the reinitiation of charges. But even if a presumption could apply, we easily rebutted it. We had a lot of evidence that we just talked about here, logical rationales after there was newly discovered evidence, and the courts just can't second guess any of that. So they did that. And again, it's a long filing, so we'll just kind of fast forward through some of the heavy lifting here. And lots of case law and details, but there was no presumption of vindictiveness. The prosecutor had no stake in the civil deportation matter. Got the summary of all of those arguments here. And the decision was made by this prosecutor. It wasn't being orchestrated from the White House. There's no evidence to show that the opposite is true. Numerous courts have confirmed different personnel involved in a prosecution saying tends to negate the claim of vindictive prosecution. Those courts have declined to impute retaliatory motives to officials, even prosecutors, to the actual decision maker. So even if Blanche said something, it doesn't relate back to the actual prosecutor who made the charging decision. And see if there's anything else good in here about actual vindictiveness. And this isn't even appropriate for initial indictments. Presumption of vindictiveness is reserved for cases where circumstances demonstrate that the only explanation for the charges is vindictive. Typical scenario is when a prosecutor ups the ante by charging a more serious offense after a lower offense is brought and the defendant rejects an outcome. Oh, you're not going to take this deal? Well, I'm going to add charges on because I'm mad at you for not actually buckling. That's not what's happening here. This is an actual case that was reopened based on a change in circumstances. The discovery of new evidence walks us through a bunch of other case law. And it's a lot. Here, let's see. And so the decision was also objectively reasonable. All of the facts show actual probable cause. The court's order granting a dismissal did not squarely explain why the charging decision was unreasonable. It was supported by legitimate concerns. In fact, this guy was ordered back. We thought that he was a human smuggler, a gang member, a designated foreign terrorist organization, and that his return was a threat. Although the deportation had removed the threat, he was back, so the threat was back. So the U.S. had a clear, legitimate interest in actually reinitiating the prosecution. During the early 20th century, no one would have presumed a vindictive motive if the government had tried to remove members of the mafia to Italy, but then prosecuted anyone else who defeated removal. And we have a strong interest in confirming that he was a threat. The civil immigration case had been skeptical of claims that he was an MS-13 member, and in verifying its claims, we're not required to turn a blind eye to this evidence. And the fact that he filed a lawsuit doesn't mean he gets to defeat all criminal cases. So the entire basis for the ruling was that prosecutors would not have indicted Abrego but for his lawsuit, right? Saying you're punishing him for actually fighting his immigration. But that misses the point. As the district court recognized, the question is whether the prosecution would not have been initiated but for vindictiveness, not for a lawsuit. In other words, the charges must be the punishment for the exercise of a protected right, not merely follow the exercise of a protected right. The fact that we bring the charges as a causal result of his lawsuit, like he filed the lawsuit that returned him to the States, that's the problem. We're not charging him based on the fact that he filed a lawsuit. It's the fact that his circumstances have changed. When he was out, we didn't want to prosecute him. Now he's here. Now we do. So that the fact that the result of the lawsuit is what we're basing on means it's not vindictive at all. And many cases illustrate this distinction. They talk about an Esposito case, another one called Murray. And this case is very similar. Although the government would have less practical reason to prosecute him if he's in El Salvador, we're not punishing him for the civil lawsuit. The result of the lawsuit changes circumstances, and that's why we're charging him. So for all these reasons, one of the district court's primary rationales gets it backwards. The timing reinforces our legitimacy. We closed it after he left and opened it after he returned. Instead, the court focuses on the fact the government did not charge in 22, as if the decision to charge in 25 can only be explained by vindictiveness. But by the way, courts have no authority to second guess charging timing decisions. That's our job in the executive branch, so you can't substitute your judgment in for ours. And Blanche and his statements on cable don't indicate any animus at all. All of this is consistent with legitimate purposes, no vindictive motives at all. And even if Blanche had animus, he had nothing to do with the charging decision. All of the chain of the causation on how the charges came about were broken. Blanche had nothing to do with it. It was all orchestrated by McGuire. We also brought independent evidence here. Objective evidence that this lawyer prosecutor had total autonomy and he was not pressured. He testified. No other counter evidence was provided. It was all there for the judge to see. Also explains that it all restarted again once they saw the news report and got the body cam footage that showed that he was literally trafficking humans. So the government's rebuttal is especially forceful given the lower court's rationale for applying its own assumptions. They believed that McGuire was a gifted prosecutor, but that he had been duped and brought into a tainted investigation. And so the judge was just making stuff up. And the district court injected its own interpretations into the case by elevating the dissenting views of the former criminal chief of McGuire's office over the person in charge. And here, all of it invalid. So they erred in excluding new evidence, and the court said, I'm not going to hear those things. This included testimony from multiple witnesses. We relied on a wealth of new evidence. Testimony from multiple witnesses. There was a young woman with no motive to lie who was underage. License plate reader data that made it clear that Abrego lied to officers during the stop because he was actually in Texas, not St. Louis. When, as here, the government can show that the charges were not brought earlier because we have new evidence, that will rebut a showing of vindictiveness, citing other case law there. But the court ignored that principle for no good reason. All the court could muster, oh, that's good, was its view that the evidence could have been discovered earlier with due diligence. But there's no due process problem with investigative delay, at least absent intentional tactical conduct that prejudices a defendant, not happening here. And so the reliance on other rules to support this diligence requirement is inexplicable. That is a standard for new trials based on new evidence is inapplicable here. If you apply it here, you're going to be in conflict with the Supreme Court. Makes no sense for a court to assess diligence in a case based on delay without considering the government's knowledge. Investigations are fluid. And so for all these reasons, the U.S. is not aware of any court applying Rule 33 to something like this, but of course this judge did. Now, each of these errors compels reversal, but the cumulative errors and the problematic implications cannot be overstated. But the district court is violating the cardinal principle that judges should not engage in Monday morning quarterbacking of prosecutorial decisions. And in a case where the government clearly had probable cause and multiple bases to actually prosecute this, the judge is engaging in judicial second guessing. And so adopting this approach will lead to a flood of vindictive motions like this in high profile cases, and accepting in only this case would be improper. if this is the standard here, it's going to have to be the standard everywhere. And so this court, in the Court of Appeals, should reverse Waverly Crenshaw's order and reinstate the indictment respectfully submitted by the Middle District of Tennessee in a very nice substantive filing. It's insane that this has even come this far. Dude should have been still seated in CCOT right now. But Stanley Woodward, who is at the helm up there, said the DOJ's most powerfully bully pulpit is the briefs we submit in court, like the one we just read. Proud of our team for the brief that we filed in our appeal of the dismissal of Kilmar Abrego's case as vindictive. As we say in our brief, the government had an obvious interest in protecting the public by prosecuting him after the court ordered his return. Federal judges should not engage in Monday morning quarterbacking of prosecutorial discretions at all. And so we'll, of course, see what the response is from Kilmar's entire team of lawyers. There's like 100 of them from everywhere coming piling in. Trump's being mean to an MS-13 gangbanger. So they come flooding in to submit their briefs, but this case may continue to advance. Hopefully the indictment comes back. He's free to leave the country, but he's not going to do that. So we'll, of course, keep our eye on this one, but it was a fiery appellate memorandum for the human trafficker who didn't even have his car impounded. So far as we know, didn't even get a friggin' speeding ticket and continued on driving through Tennessee with his entire entourage of non-citizens. While if you were in this position, you go 11 miles over, you get a ticket. You drive on a suspended license, your car gets impounded. You're caught hauling something illegal, you get charged with felonies. But not if you're an illegal alien MS-13 gangbanger. You get whatever you want in America. So we're going to keep our eye on this case, and hopefully we see the indictment reinstated. When more drops, we'll be here to cover it. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, and so friends, it has been a lovely stream today. If you're just getting here, quick recap on what we dug into. First and foremost, we talked about the cover-up from the NSA. They had memos that they were sending back and forth to each other, explaining how they had a lot of evidence about foreign influence and interference in our elections, starting all the way back in 2014, going through 2016. They really wanted to get the report out in 2019. They were not allowed to do that. Then they wanted to get it out in 2020. And they were all cut off by the deputy director of the NSA and the director of the NSA. And nothing came out because our intelligence agencies hate election integrity and they didn't want to be criticized by either side of the political aisle. So we're all the dumber for it, and they failed at their jobs. We also talked a little bit and heard from Jim Jordan. We talked about MIKIE Sherrill out of New Jersey, who apparently is now caving and is agreeing, according to Mark Wayne Mullen, to work with Homeland Security to stop aliens from voting in New Jersey after the massive discovery of all of the non-citizens on the lists. All interesting news out there. We then saw that there are these videos that Scott Pressler dug up of judges in Minnesota who apparently are training people on how to absolutely, no matter what, not use ID when you go to the rolls, and also how to vouch for up to 8 people by just bringing people in and say, oh yeah, no, it's Mohammed, and Mohammed over here. Oh, here, have ballots, everybody. Go vote for Ilhan. And then no one checks anything in the aftermath. Harmeet Dhillon is sending election monitors out to 2 more states, Florida and Wyoming. We also saw the Secretary Adrian Fontes out of Arizona says it's voter intimidation if ICE goes to the polls because it's going to intimidate American citizens or something. Yeah, so that's that guy. Then we also saw in North Carolina, the Democrat governor up there vetoed a new bill that was passed by the state legislature, saying we're not going to allow any election integrity reforms or else we'll lose our elections in perpetuity. And more from Harmeet on this one about election integrity. Then we saw Fauci's senior top advisor, David Morens, took a plea deal today. And in it, we read through the stipulation of facts and saw how much he was colluding with Peter Daszak, EcoHealth Alliance, using his leverage to influence Fauci, getting gratuities like wine and maybe other things like, trips to certain restaurants, and was covering the whole thing up, trying to use a non-governmental email account, even though he was so dumb he had it on his main cell phone, trying to evade FOIA, trying to make sure that these off-the-record conversations were never captured on the record. Now he's pleading guilty to one crime, and the case is landed in Judge Zenas' courtroom. This is the same Abrego judge. So ultimately, I don't expect him to get anything other than probation, to be perfectly clear, because she's a hack activist judge. Then speaking of her, we talked about Kilmar, wife beating Abrego Garcia, who now is getting hit by the DOJ in an appeal. We took a look at the body camera footage. We had a nice little diagram to explain some of the backstory on the case. We then read through the actual appellate memorandum. And now we'll be waiting for his ACLU lawyers, gangbang lover lawyers, to respond. And we'll see how the case develops. But now it is time to hear from you. And happy Tuesday, my friends. I hope your week is unfolding beautifully. You're out there accomplishing all the things you set your mind to. We're really glad that you're here and joining us on the day. I think I saw a couple of nice donos come in. So let's see what you have to say about all of this. What's going on, friends? Look who's here. We got a bunch of new members today. Amazing. So we had a great members only stream this morning. What did we talk about this morning? Oh yeah, there was a fake polling company that duped a bunch of Democrats and even some of us. There was a law school that is now being targeted for their racist scholarships, which is another good one. Harmeet's going after them. And we did a Lindsay Clancy summary, essentially. We went through the entire first 13 days of the prosecution's case in chief, created a whole nice little flow chart for the thing. And so all of that was great this morning. If you're a new member, check those out. And then, of course, we'll be back tomorrow for another one. But hey, Zone Girl, man, what's up? Thank you for prayers up for the Rubos. I think they're still in recovery land, so prayers up for the Rubos. Saying, hopefully he's making good progress, getting good news from the doctors. I know God is looking over this strong Christian family. May they be blessed this week for their faithfulness. Amen. Thank you for that, Zone Girl. Yeah, you know, Alexis was asking about the Rubos. Saying, how are they doing? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard from them. So thank you for sharing that, Zone Girl. Hopefully they're doing well. We pray for the Rubos. Very good people. So thank you, Zone Girl. Hey, Dark Rogue, what's going on, man? I made it to level 1, working on baby number 2. Amazing to have you, Dark Rogue. 15 months as a member. And thank you for being a shout-out member, my man. We appreciate that. And, you know, the more babies we get, the better it is for everybody, because babies are beautiful. Thank you, Dark Rogue. We appreciate you, friend. What's up, Tim Jake? There are some who call him Tim. What's up? Bringing in 5 new members. Thank you, Tim, for doing this. We got Chris P. Welcome. B6163. What's up? Based CPU. Peng guys in the house. And the Seal, all gifted members, courtesy of Tim Jake. We'll see all of our new members tomorrow morning and grab this morning's members stream from this morning for members. Thank you for that. Hey, what's going on, Dark Rogue? Hey, 20 new members, Dark Rogue. You're amazing. What a beautiful day. Hey, Lord Devonshire. What's up, One Dirty Bird? We got Michael Stetson is here. First 15 months are the hardest. Gets easier from there. XX Panda 101. What's up, Miss Mo? John White. Good to see you. Payday. What's up, Tipsy Dixit? King Juice. We got Primary Mammoth. We got Jay Morrison. Nardo Polo. Welcome. Megan Beatty. Ashton is watching. We love the watchers. Elijah Cod. OK UK You Hermit. What's up? Gryburn. Serene Sky. William Park. We got Just Rhonda. What's going on? KB55101. And Marianne Kusowitz in the house. All gifted members, courtesy of Dark Rogue. 15 months as a member. And a Dark Rogue, indeed. Thank you for that, Dark Rogue. We'll see everybody in the morning. I'd rather be skiing. The NSA, like apparently all federal agencies, appear to me to be corrupt to the hilt. Good, probably a good estimate. And against the American people and our Constitution. They or Congress can feel free to prove me wrong, please. Yeah, no, I think it's basically all of them. It's like the ruling class in a way. There's a concept called the iron law of oligarchy, right? Once you kind of get big enough, every societal structure, every function turns into an oligarchical class. There's always going to be a group of people who are, racing to establish power. Once they establish that power, they lift up the ladder from under them. Then they lock themselves down so there's no transparency, so that nobody's accountable. They cordon off any threats to their power, and you get this kind of calcified layer in society, which are the oligarchs. And I think that's where we're at in many ways. We've got these agencies. You can put Kash Patel at the top. You can put the CIA at the top. You can put RFK at the top. Doesn't really matter. There's going to be this calcified layer that's just really hard to battle back against. And the NSA, I mean, they've been doing this forever. Like, weren't they all over the Snowden files in the X key score PowerPoint slides? Like, they were the ones behind a lot of this. Like, the idea that they've suddenly wised up, I think, is a tall order. So, but I'm with you. I'd rather be skiing. We will feel free to be proven wrong. Mosheg, you know that the truth always comes out in the end, and it just may take a while, but falsehood always fails and always falls. Yeah, I think that's an optimistic framing on that. And to kind of respond to my prior comment, which was a little black pill, the problem with the calcified structures is eventually, they can't maintain power forever. They become overly calcified. They become immobile. They become ineffective because they're hardened. And just because they're the oligarchical class or this layer in society doesn't mean that they're useful or have utility for the public. And eventually, it's almost like a black hole, right? They kind of collapse in on their own gravity and fail, which is, I think, part of the dynamics of a nation state's life cycle. It's like a body politic. You have a birth, an adolescence, a maturity, and a death, senior years, and things kind of change over. So it's on a long time cycle and a long time scale. But I'm with you. I do think that the problem with secrecy, deception, and dishonesty is it's a dark force. It's something that really can't sustain itself. You need more of it in order to perpetuate the darkness and the dishonesty. And eventually, people start turning on each other and the whole system ultimately collapses. It's kind of like the lessons of communism, right? Eventually, one leader wants to take out the other leader. The whole system ultimately buckles under its own weight, which I think is right. That's why we have to stay on the side of truth. We have to stay on the side of liberty, freedom. We don't want a positive type of liberty where the government is granting you these liberties and these freedoms, because that's not freedom at all. That's being a slave to the government in order to exercise your freedoms. We want actual liberty in the way that the founders envisioned. And there's always equal and opposite reactions, right? Like Trump just won, so we see this massive reaction by the Democratic Party with the DSAs and kind of like open communism and Marxism. But then that will emerge, and then there'll be a strong reaction to that. And eventually, I think the force of good, I honestly do believe that people have a natural inherent goodness to them and will ascend and find a way, just like stubborn creatures. Like there's this small group of people in society that are just stubborn, and they're not going to accept anything less than freedom, absolute liberty, and total freedom, which I think we're in good company here. That's why I love you so much, because I think that's the reality. And we have to just keep persevering and persevering. It may take 3 or 4 generations or whatever, but it's really no different than what our founding fathers did. And they had to make a hard cut from the old world and come here and have a revolution. And I think, that cycle may be upon us as well. But ultimately, freedom will prevail. Truth will prevail. And I think a lot of this is in God's hands. And he's not up there twiddling his thumbs. He knows what's going on, trying to figure it out. He knows what's happening. Psychological projectionist. Is there a correlation between long names and fraud? It's a good question. Not really. Not that I can tell. Jack Smith, pretty short fraudster. John Brennan, pretty short fraudster. James Clapper, pretty short fraudster. James Comey. You know what the correlation is? Names that start with J. James, Jack, John, and John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, 2 James, and Jack Smith. So I think it's the J's. So be very cautious of all those J's out there. Hey, Psychological, thank you. Neil C. Peelsey, 30 months. Neil C., thank you for being here for so long. We appreciate you. 3 guidelines for being a dad. And Joe Biden, add in Joe, another one. Love the hell out of your kid. I do. I've got that accomplished. Oh, John just said a comment. Sorry, John. Help MC around corners. Yeah, I'll work on that. 3, apply underhooks when holding them. Congrats to you too. That's an interesting comment. Do you mean like wrestling underhooks? Because that's a pretty powerful position. You know, you get in there, you get a good underhook, kind of grab. It's a very powerful position. So when we're on the mats or just in general, because I also do the football hold too, you know, with this little baby. I'm getting good at all my holds. Thank you, Neil C. Great comment. I got a lot to learn. I know I do. So I appreciate the insight. Hey, Richard Tatership. What's up, Taters in the house? Bringing in 10 new members. Thank you, Richard, for bringing new friends in. Fett, what's up? Karen Gowdy, what's up? Gamlin. We got Icebergs. The Heifer next door. We got Grouchy Mama Bear. What's up, Mama Bear? Jay Kimbo, Barb Taylor. We got the Harrison, Therison, and Dublin in the house. Richard Tatership bringing in some new friends. We'll see everybody in the morning. And hopefully you grabbed the stream from this morning because we had some other good stuff to talk about. Dark Rogue, what's up? Hey, this is just a dream. Thune had a plan all along, comes back from the break, gets rid of the filibuster, passes the SAVE Act, Dems sue, activist judge blocks, Supreme Court overturns on an emergency, blue states break new law, and a dream comes true. Yeah, could you imagine? We come back here in September, John Thune goes home, you know, he goes for a walk, he has a nice couple of donuts, and maybe, you know, something happens where like he bumps his head, for example, gets out of the car, oof, and then something and John goes through like one of those moments, John Thune, like in the movies, where it's like slow music, very zoomed out. He's contemplating. Then there's a rainstorm and he's sitting by the window and the rain is pouring down. And John Thune is reflecting. What am I doing here? What is my reason for being in the Senate? Soft, sympathetic music. And then all of a sudden it's like the Rocky theme. And he wakes up, he goes, I know what I need to do. He gets back into his car, comes back to the Senate, all of a sudden passes the SAVE Act, ends the filibuster. We get election reform across the country. We get all the judges we've ever wanted, all appointed instantly. And the country is saved. Trump says, I knew you had it in you, son. And they shake hands and America returns to glory. It is a good dream, Dark Rogue. I can feel it almost. Hopefully it happens. Thank you for the nice dono and comment. Sharpie Guy, yeah, Rob, Locals is actually working today. Oh, that's great. It's good news. Hey, in Minnesota, just like O'Keefe, but how do the monitors handle more than one-time voting in the same name? What then, Rob? So corrupt, right? Well, presumably, you would have them checked off on the list, right? You'd like open up the list. Okay, we got Muhammad here, check. Muhammad, got it, check. Muhammad, check, gotcha. So if they came back and tried again, then they'd be prohibited from voting again. But my question, if there's no ID being checked and somebody knows the names on the list, somebody submits a bunch of fraudulent registrations. I don't think they check anything. That's why you get non-citizens on the list in New Jersey. Just make up things, submit it. So what if you just went around to different locations and had the same people vouching in separate locations? Yeah, this is this guy. All you need to know is the name on the list. That's it. If you know the name on the list, you're good. And apparently you can find all the names on the list. In Arizona, they hacked the whole list. Some guy in Fountain Hills hacked like thousands of names, just found them, got the names. So he could literally, right, if we had vouching in Arizona, which we don't, you could just go around to all of the different locations with 15 of your friends, 2 people apiece, eight a pop, and just then, oh, I'm these people in all these precincts. This is me. Oh, great. Welcome. You voted. Any ID? Don't need it. Here, just cast your ballot. All you need is the list. That's the whole point. If you take the list, you control everything. Nathan shared this. Prosecute this guy, Albert Bourla. And Massey shared this a couple days ago. Bourla said, excited to share that updated analysis from our phase 3 study with biotech showed also that COVID was 100% effective. Remember that crap? No, they never said that. Yeah, they did. This guy did. Albert Bourla, 100% effective in preventing COVID in South Africa. 100%, he says. Then it went, it's 99%. Then 98, 97, 95. It's like 90%. Then once they dropped out of the 90s, they didn't want to talk about it anymore. It prevents serious illness is what they transitioned to. It's not effective in preventing it. It prevents serious illness. Goalpost move. Whoop. And then it was, you got to get your booster, though, every 6 months. Go get on the subscription program for the big pharma companies. Yeah. So thank you. Thomas Massey says, Albert Bourla, veterinarian and CEO of Pfizer, I remember that guy, did not get a pardon. Prosecute him. Pharmaceutical companies are not permitted to make such blatantly false claims about the efficacy of their products. Tweet is from April 21, before the jabs were even licensed and mandated. Frauds and criminals, man. Yeah, so Thomas is right on that one. Joe, in the election doc release you covered, they mentioned AI flipping votes in Venn in the report from 2006. CIA knew of AI back then? Been thinking. In the one that we just read today, we've covered so many of them. I don't remember that specifically. AI flipping votes in Venn in the report from 06. Was that in the documents we just read? Did I fast forward through that? Yeah. I don't recall that. Any AIs flipping actual votes. How would they do that? But yeah, I mean, I would imagine the CIA was playing around with LLMs and transformers. I mean, they may be seeding these companies, right? Part of the thesis, like with Facebook, is that it was, and Google, like Google was a DARPA-funded project at one point. Facebook may have intelligence connections. You also ask about like Amazon and these things, like where'd they get all their seed funding from? And maybe these are, you know, the reason they've grown so big is because they're facilitating with the government. But yeah, I'm not sure which one you're referencing, Joe, but we've covered a lot of them. Thank you for the nice comment today. Sharpie guy, Rob, what would you have read about Milquetoast McGovern, South Dakota Democrat for president in the 70s? Mark Wayne Mullen is the next Milquetoast guy. He appears to me to be weaseling his way through his current position. I hope not. I want them all to succeed. Just can't be more than 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the water. What say you, brother? Love y'all. Blessings for you, Cannon, Alexis, and the watchers. Thank you, Sharpie guy. Yeah, I mean, Mark Wayne feels like a senator in Homeland's position. And senators are very squishy, as we call them in the Senate, when it comes to illegal immigration. So I'm not actually surprised by some of his comments. Like he made the comment, he got reamed for it. And then I think he got like banned by Susie Wiles from the internet for a couple weeks. He got grounded, 2 weeks off the internet, no more posting there, Mark. But he said something like, well, help me help you. Like if you don't want to get deported once TPS is canceled, just go apply and we'll grant you citizenship was the implication. We'll grant you status. So just go apply, but I can't do it if you don't do it. So stuff like that. You know, I don't honestly think that there's a lot of will for the type of mass deportation that we need, even on our side of the aisle. It would be a political, you know, explosion. And there's insurgents who are preventing it from happening. We saw what was tried in Minnesota. They insurrected the deportation efforts there, and they got a couple people killed, which I think was their intention, so that they could exploit their deaths to create blowback on the enforcement. And it worked. Largely. So I think, you know, that's why Noam's gone. That's why Bovino is gone. That's why they brought in Mark Wayne, more middle of the road type of guy. And there's just, even on the conservative, like the donor class, the business class, they just don't want it to happen. Even though it would be, probably because it would be good for Americans. I think there are a lot of downstream benefits of mass deportations. We could have more housing availability. There would be a real serious perturbation in the force out there for a while. You'd see jobs numbers go down. You'd see housing prices go down. Lots of people would be very mad about that. But ultimately, you want to, I think, at least get to the pace of where the invasion was. So if there were 5,000 to 7,000 people coming across every day, you at least got to get to that pace. 5,000 to 7,000 really should be 10. You know, every day, just like clockwork. But that would be a mass operation, and I just don't think there's a stomach for it. Maybe after the midterms, but even then I doubt it. But there are other things that we're doing, right? Like TPS got canceled across. So I don't want to call it a total failure. I don't think it is at all. First of all, borders closed. TPS got canceled. They're doing, you know, banking reforms. Huge amounts of visas all got canceled. We've got funding for a lot of the invasionary operations all getting cut off. So there's a lot of things that are going on, but in terms of like actual physical bodies, like mass deportations, I just don't think that there is a lot of stomach for it. King of Biltong, what's going on? Hey, turn up the flavor with Peri Peri Biltong, baby. It's mild heat, big flavor, over 50% protein to keep you going. Try the full Peri Peri range. Go to BiltongUSA.com, use code Robert, and you'll save 10% off on your home delivered meats. Thank you, King of Biltong. Hopefully it's flying off the shelves over there. And Just John Doe, what's up? You know, with Morens and others in the future pleading guilty regardless of the lack of sentencing, does that guilty plea open themselves to massive lawsuits from miscarriages and other adverse effects? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't necessarily think so. I mean, the charges here were about basically the destruction of government records and a conspiracy to hide the evidence of their bad dealings. So first of all, I think he's a government official, so he'll have some qualified immunity in his position against the lawsuit. Now, Daszak wouldn't, right? Daszak wouldn't. All of these other people who are in the private sector, they wouldn't have any of that. So I think that could open them up to liability. But was there much in the plea deal about, hiding evidence of like a miscarriage? I didn't see much of that. It was about origin. It was about criticism of a company, about EcoHealth. So like, what's the causation? What did we discover in the plea deal, in the stipulation of facts that could be translated into, you covered up something that harmed me? And maybe you could make the claim that it goes all the way back to the source of the virus, like the fact that they were trying to finagle EcoHealth Alliance as to being not the cause of this when they maybe knew it was the cause of it, could open them up to some liability. But ultimately, I don't think so. I think a lot of the civil lawsuits are going to fail unless you're going after third parties. Again, maybe like the vaccine companies, right? These are big companies. They don't have the same qualified immunity. They're not government officials. So I think that would be a little bit different, but I'm open to it. I mean, part of me is like, sue first, ask questions later. Just unleash all of these things so that there is at least a modicum of accountability, even if they just have to respond to the lawsuits. If the left were in charge, if this was reversed and inverse of this, they would be doing it. So that's kind of my thought. Not frivolous lawsuits, but, worth investigating. Thank you, Just John Doe. Hey, First Amendment. Rob, congrats on the new baby, man. Thank you, First Amendment. Says, I have a question. And regarding the Morens plea deal, how come the co-conspirators cannot be named and are redacted? Thank you. I think it's just standard practice. Like, we know who they are largely. And I think Francis Collins may have been co-conspirator too. But it's because they're not indicted. It's just kind of privacy rights, like protecting the privacy of others. And I don't remember if they were charged in the indictment, but yeah, you kind of want them all to be named. But I think the theory is that they're not guilty of anything. They still are entitled to the presumption of innocence. They haven't been charged yet. They might be charged. But you don't want to, it's just a deference to privacy. So they're not actually implicating them in something for which they're not convicted in. He's taking a guilty plea. They're not. So if ultimately they do get charged, their names, of course, will come out. And then they'll all have on the record what they've done. But it's pretty common. I don't know that there's any other real good reason for it other than they're not the subject of the change of plea. But we know who they are. And I think some of that was in the indictment. I don't think they were as redactive in their indictment. Good to see you, First Amendment. Thank you for being here. Lil Rue, what's up, Lil Rue? Whoa, what's up from Scotland, man? Shout out to all of our friends in Scotland, man. Thank you for watching over in Scotland. Amazing. Would love to go visit one day. 13 months as a member, Little Room. That's a baker's dozen. Appreciate you being here for so long. Happy over 1 year anniversary to us. We love you having you here. Shout out to our friends from Scotland. And LZ, what's going on, LZ? Saying, good evening, Robert. Owing to the fact that no one can purchase locals coins, it is now a guilt-edged priority since I have some left to post super chats on everyone's behalf. But I can't think of anything to say except good luck, everyone. Here's hoping the coin problem gets resolved soon. From locals. Didn't even realize it was down, but that's great. So thank you, LZ. We appreciate it. And thank you for spreading the love around. and for being here. Hopefully they get that fixed, but we'll have to see. Hey, Jim tells you. What's going on, Jim? We'll send some friends over to your channel as soon as we're done here. Jim tells you. We'll be streaming right next door. Cliff Meggs, what's up? Hey, the Spanish Inquisition lasted for 356 years. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, generational change. Between 3,000 and 5,000 people were killed. This is about 8 to 14 a year. Chicago will do that this weekend. Religion is the example that is given by secularists when they say religion has killed more people than anything. When one considers the death rate for secularists, it's over 100 million, like the communists, yeah. It is stunning that some Americans may be ready to support socialists and or communists to have this horrible track record. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Cliff Meggs. And I think it's, in many ways, it's a failure of our education system, our lack of civic virtue in the country. Founders, American history, American philosophy, Western ideals, Christianity, right? The idea of having morality and spirituality integrated into your educational system. Like, what good is knowing facts and evidence and your multiplication tables if you don't have a moral foundation upon which to live? Like, I think maybe morality might be a little bit more important, and understanding the basis for the value structure of society should be a prerequisite before you start layering on the quadratic formula. You know, just a thought. But a lot of that got ripped away from us and has literally been replaced with this new mentality, indoctrinated in this subversionary methodology over generations now, that all of that is actually bad. That causes more harm, and the socialists, the communists have the answer, and everybody needs to be neutered and taken down to the lowest common denominator. No families. A family structure leads to division in society. So everybody should be broken apart. The state should raise your kids, should not be men and women. We should neuter both sides. All the class warfare stuff, all the, boomer versus young people stuff, meant to just kind of hollow out relationships amongst people so that everybody can just become beholden to the state. And then the state, of course, will kill you if you don't comply. So it is a big problem, but it's kind of like, the cyclical thing that we go through, and we're going through it right now in America. So we have to be vigilant about it. But I don't really know how it's going to play out. We'll see what happens in the midterms, but they have a lot of energy, right? They have a lot of energy. But I do think that they're up against the oligarchy and the plutocracy, kind of a government of the wealthy, by the wealthy, for the wealthy. And so even the wealthy people that LARP as communists and LARP as socialists, pretend to be those people, aren't really. We played that clip here of Scott Holloway, whatever his name is. Scott Galloway, I think. When he's like, I support Mamdani. Then when Mamdani puts his name on the internet, like, you're a rich person, he's like, why'd Mamdani do that to me? That's going to happen to a bunch of them. They're going to wake up and realize, like, these communists are coming for them first. So I think that it's going to be, out of power communists and socialists versus really the main kind of oligarchical class. You've got like the Zuckerbergs, the Bezos, and other people in that domain, who will shapeshift into whatever the current political environment is, but they'll definitely not acquiesce to giving up their wealth. They'll do anything that they can, and they've got a lot of it. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, they've got a bad track record. And millions and millions have died as a result of their policies. And people just don't understand that. They just think, no, that's not what's going to happen. It's all just about me getting some free stuff and the government paying for this, that, or the other thing. Not realizing what that actually means. What's going on? A couple other comments. We'll wrap. Then Defrauded in China says, I put Victor Shokin's affidavit on Hunter Biden's paternity case. Shokin did an affidavit in Polish court that Biden got him fired for when investigating the Ukrainian oligarchs paying Hunter. All you got to do to find out more about this is Google Joel Kaplan, Hunter Biden. And if you haven't seen this article from Joel, he's available for podcast, so just check him out. This article, let me show you this handsome fella named Joel right here. Where is he? Yeah, what's up, Joel? Right here. Defrauded investor Joel Kaplan, right here on the Daily Mail. He's available for podcast to show and tell you his entire story. And he got screwed by the Biden crime family. And so he could use some support. If you're out there, reach out, go to his website, thechinahustle.us, to learn more about our friend Joel. Good to see you, Joel. Dan with a couple of funnies here. Why are you asking me about the suspect that rampaged the village and knocked down all your flock cameras? Looking at Frankenstein, because maybe Frankenstein did it. Thank you, Dan. Here's another one. So Hong lost her primary race, which means Thanksgiving won't be canceled, but voters in Wisconsin still managed to say no to a turkey. Extremist couldn't stuff ballot boxes. Some ugly looking people there. Thank you, Dan. Walk it off. It has been a lovely stream indeed. Lots of evidence on the record forever. Man, thank you for saying that, Walk It Off. It feels good when you're able to etch this into the vibrational patterns of the universe for all time. And we did it together. So thank you for being here and joining us for that. Walk It Off. Hey, Tobo. John Thune is running for minority leader of the Senate, and he may be able to succeed at this goal. Oh, gosh. That's a zinger, isn't it? What does John really want? To be minority leader. Great. He can make that happen. Tobo. Here's a new one. Texas Governor Greg Abbott got sued by Keith Ellison. I saw that headline because Abbott is refusing to send an ICE agent to Minnesota to face charges. Ellison having a meltdown. Yeah, we may come back on that one tomorrow. I did not see the documents drop on that one. But yeah, another big one. So we've got an interstate conflict between the Somalians in Minnesota and the American Texans down in Texas, which should be fun to continue to keep our eye on. Wild times out there. So thank you for that, Tobo in the house. See if we got any other comments on X, and then we'll call it a night, my friends. Of course, we'll come back tomorrow, see what else we have in store. B Torn, what's up? Yeah, and CR Citizen on X. Aliens do not have Fourth Amendment protections. It says so. The people, not persons. And legal aliens may reside in the United States. However, they do not have legal residency in any state. Just refer back to the 14th Amendment. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of your interpretation. And they've been given mass amounts of due process and equal protection in a way that I don't think even applies to them at all. Be torn. The saga over the two Sullivans has gotten the DOJ's attention. Oh, interesting. In the Alaska race, right? I think they have primaries also happening today. Thank you, Be Torn. Thank you, CR Citizen, for a couple of those comments. Let's drop some likes over here. If I can click the button without spazzing out. Amazing. Be Torn. And Neuro D sharing watchingthewatchers.locals.com. What a lovely day it is. Come join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, if you want to come see us in our members-only morning stream this morning. Tomorrow morning, we'll catch you there. Otherwise, my friends, let's wrap on the day. Lenny DW, you're doing awesome for a guy who gets 30 minutes of sleep a night. Congrats. Yes, sleep. I was talking to a friend about this morning, and he said, you know, the first month is like you're kind of just running on pure adrenaline. And I thought, that's an interesting point. Interesting point indeed. And from this morning, we had a couple of other comments. I think it's right. I kind of am operating like on pure adrenaline. But he says, eventually that's going to wear off and you have to figure out what you're doing with your life or else you'll be drooling all over yourself. So I'll work on it. Jeff, from this morning, the polls are attempting the ever popular tail wag the dog strategy. The whole country used to see it coming now. Now it seems there are 50 million or so that have a difficult time with discerning snake oil from penicillin. Yeah. And also, says, Dems a bunch of fish biting anything, they will help them. Easy to exploit. Hey there, RNC. Joe G, are you watching? Tobo, we got that one from this morning. Good stuff. All right. So friends, been an amazing day. Happy Tuesday. We've got a lot of week ahead left. We're excited to see what else it has in store for us. We appreciate you joining us as we continue to go through it together. We'll pause here for the evening. Wish you a beautiful, restful sleep. Big thank yous to our amazing mods and meme smiths. We got Donut Mind Me in the house. We got John, what's going on? We got Muffin Rando. We got K Bean. We got Neuro D. We got Janek. We got Dog Digger. We got Geegum Geegum, Elliot, and Just Rhonda. Keeping things nice and orderly around here. And friends, thank you for liking the video on your way out. Thank you for subscribing if you haven't already done that. Thanks for sharing the show with a friend or family member. so that we can see them when we come back here live tomorrow, because we will be back here. And in order to do this appropriately, we need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Sleep very, very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through